Following feature is suitable for viewing by your entire family.
Alcatraz, once a grim federal fortress prison, is abandoned now. Cracked masonry and rusted barbed wire are all that remains on the bare rock island. But for a few months, beginning in the fall of 1969, Alcatraz echoed to new sounds, songs and laughter, drum beats and defiance, drifted with the wind and seagull cries across the San Francisco Bay. The Indians had landed, Blackfeet, Winnebago, Sioux and Cheyenne, Navajo and Apache, city people, reservation people, horse people, sheep herders, fishermen, and hunters of the Arctic. They called themselves Indians of all tribes. They asserted that the island was a part of the sacred Earth Mother, wrongfully taken from their ancestors, now surplus to the white man's needs. Alcatraz was to belong to the Indians again, to become a spiritual center, an ecological center, a training center. They offered the great white father in Washington $24 in glass trade beads and red cloth, the same amount which Manhattan Indians received for their island in 1626. Of course, the occupation was not to last indefinitely. For the next 19 months, government agencies parleyed, warned, threatened, coaxed, and finally moved in and cleared the island. But the Indians had made their point. The eyes of the world had been on Alcatraz and its occupiers, if only for a little while. Other sites would soon be occupied, and Wounded Knee would be a scene of confrontation for the second time in a century. I'm Iron Eyes Cody, and it's not the purpose of this presentation to belabor the causes of this American Indian situation or to try to solve it. Anyone with even a slight knowledge of American history should be aware of these generalities. In particular, we hope to acquaint you with some of the unique features of the Indian way. Such knowledge will help you to better interact with American Indians who are trying to cope with the problems and frustrations of adjusting to urban life. Most people probably do not realize that Los Angeles has the largest urban population in the nation. The 1970 census reported nearly 25,000 Indians in Los Angeles County. Indians estimate a figure more than 45,000 to 60,000. However, there can be no truly accurate assessment since the Indian population is so mobile, moving between city and reservations and from one city location to another. Somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of all American Indians now live in urban settings, but this is not always apparent. The majority population may fail to recognize them as Indians. An Aleut from Alaska might be mistaken for an Asian, a fair-skinned, lanky Sioux for an Anglo, or a dusky-complexioned Hopi for a Latin. There are at least 315 distinct tribal communities in the United States today, speaking nearly 200 languages. This complicates recognition at times, even among Indians. Sooner or later, most young Indians leave their reservations. Most reservations have little to offer in the way of jobs, schools, or future. Indians, in comparison to other racial or ethnic groups in the United States, die the youngest, get the least education, suffer the most infant death, have the lowest income, are the most unemployed, and have the poorest housing. Reservation lands, gradually whittled away by white settlers, were set aside in areas with no known mineral wealth or potentials for agriculture or industry. Tourism is being promoted by several tribes, such as the Apaches, for Indians do have an abundance of time and space and the richness of their culture to offer. But tourism alone, in the rugged isolation of most reservations, is not the answer. On the positive side of reservation life, there has been considerable publicity concerning the few tribes with resources, capital, and the trained leaderships to develop these resources. The Navajo are a prime example of adaptation of the Indian way to the modern world. Window Rock, Arizona, now considered the capital of the Navajo Nation, is a living symbol of change, growth, and tradition. Tribal officials control police, fire, and ranger functions. They provide counsel on legislation, tribal land rights, and local disputes. Rough Rock Demonstration School, run entirely by and for Indians, has set a new standard for Indian education, with English taught as a second language. Navajo Community College in 1968 became the first U.S. institution of higher learning to be owned and operated by Indians. At Shiprock, New Mexico, a giant sawmill operation supports the first Indian planned community. Nor are the Navajo unique. The Lummi of Washington, master fishermen for 1,000 years, have parlayed their traditional occupation into a $2 million a year sea farming industry in less than a decade, backed at first by government and private agencies. The Lummis learned marine biology, built giant hatcheries, and began raising oysters and adapted trout in seawater ponds. Today, a Lummi agriculture school trains other tribes who believe that their future still lies with the sea and rivers. Other tribes have developed oil resources, tourism, or recreational facilities to increase the tribal income. Unfortunately, these examples are still exceptions. In general, the reservations are dismal places in terms of future potentials. A few reservation industries are owned and operated by outside interests, but they typically employ Indians only at lower-level jobs. Also, because of uncertain water and power sources, as well as the untried labor force, most manufacturers are understandably reluctant to locate new industries on the reservation. All of these factors serve as incentives to young Indians who leave the reservation to try their fortune in the cities. Urban Indians have fared somewhat better than the reservation brothers. They have traded the outdoors and a family home community for a better future through education and hard work. By and large, the trade has paid off. Indians who have come to the cities and stayed are making gains in education, employment, housing, and health. But urban life also includes pollution, congestion, a faster pace, callousness, and the loosening of family, tribal, and culture ties. The jolt of transport from one small community to a metropolis is hard to take for anyone, and for an Indian who may not even speak the predominant language of the city, that jolt is often too much. Some simply cannot make the adjustment and return to the reservation until desperation moves them to try again. Those who stay seek company of other Indians at known gathering places and through agencies established to help Indians with the problem of adjustment. Your handout lists a number of Indian service centers and assistant agencies to which you can refer Indians in need of such community services. Though alcoholism is a major problem among Indians, not all Indians are drunks or unable to hold their alcohol. Still, it is a fact that for whatever reason, alcohol-related incidents do account for the majority of Indian arrests in Los Angeles. Drugs are not a major problem in the Indian community. The main one you will probably encounter is peyote, which is legitimately used in the ceremonies of the Native American church. Though possession of peyote is technically illegal, except in connection with the religious ceremonies, many traditional Indians carry or wear peyote all the time as protection. Now, these little medicine bags also have this kinnikinick, and they have peyote in them. And peyote is a medicine. I wear one all the time. I have a little bag here somewhere. Some 15 years, that's a peyote. And every time I wear this belt, there's peyote there. We have faith in it. You can go to war, it would protect you. We believe in it. That's a faith we have. So we're very traditional people. These are medicine bags put up by our spiritual leaders for our traditional Indians. And we have a lot of them here in Los Angeles. They wear them around their neck or any part of their body. The medicine in here is very sacred. I don't know, and many of our Indians do not know what most of this medicine is, but we have to have faith in it. So this is powerful medicine, gentlemen. Do not pull it off their necks. Let them do it, because it's been blessed. And even eagle claws, bear claws, these have all been blessed that these young men are wearing today. So it's sacred as any church. Another sacred object which you should know about is the pipe. The white man call it a peace pipe, but it is far more than that. When you go in an Indian's home, or wherever he is, at a ceremonial place, our spiritual leaders are there with a pipe and a pipe bag. This pipe bag is made by the Sioux Indians, or Indians of the plains, as we would say. It's a very sacred bag. It protects the pipe. They put about so much of kinnikinick, herb tobacco, and it protects the bowl of this sacred pipe, because this pipe was made in Minnesota, at Pipestone, Minnesota, and the big quarry there. It came from Mother's Earth. It's a red clay, but it's called pipestone or Catalanite. This is an old one, made by a friend of mine many, many years ago, Frank Concho, a Cheyenne. He blessed this pipe when I was a little boy, and it's been in my museum ever since. But Frank Foolscrow, a medicine man up at Pine Ridge, and Andrew Frank Foolscrow, a man that, spiritual leader that protects all of these things. So when you see one of these in the homes, do not touch it. Let him take the tobacco out or the kinnikinick. It is not narcotic whatsoever. Now, Eagle Feather also blessed this pipe with Frank Foolscrow. This pipe has been in the Sundance. So it's a sacred emblem, really. It's really sacred. The stem, I made it myself. I'm a traditional. I did the porcupine quill work here, and that is blessed by our spiritual leaders. So anything that's blessed, little medicine bags that we wear and all that, let the Indian take it off and give it to you. Many herbs are represented here. The base of it, in the bark of a red willow tree. Very fine, chopped up fine. Bitterroot, sweetroot, alder leaves, sassafras bark, sweetgrass, all chopped up. Now, they've been smoking this for thousands of years. This is medicine also. There's one part in here can cure your throat. There's one part in here can take the red out of your eye. So there's a lot of medicine in here. Absolutely no nicotine, no tobacco whatsoever. It's just herbs. And it's called kinnikinick. And kinnikinick means a mixture. Some Indians are a mixture also. Many Indians have intermarried with Mexicans or Mexican Americans. As a result, many Indians have Spanish surnames. However, officers should never assume that someone with a Spanish surname is necessarily a Mexican or a Mexican American. To call an Indian Mexican or Chicano can be taken as an insult, even if none is intended. While we're talking about names and insults, now is a good time to discuss terminology. Of course, there are as many Indian terms for different kinds of Indians as there are tribes. But almost universally, Indians or Native Americans or First Americans refer to themselves in their own language by words which translate as the people. Indians usually prefer to be called Indians or Native Americans by non-Indians. Terms not to use if one is not an Indian includes chief, buck, and squaw. Indians may also be offended by non-Indians who, in an effort to establish rapport, tell them that they are part Indian themselves or that their great-grandmother was an Indian. Most Indians see this as patronizing. On the Indian side, an Indian whose value appears to be those of the dominant society, that is, an Indian who does not think or act like an Indian, is sometimes referred to as an apple, red on the outside and white on the inside. Most male Indians in the city work as laborers or construction workers when they are employed. Unemployment among Indians in the city runs as high as 40% and can reach 80% on some reservations. Women are generally considered unemployable since they are expected to remain at home with the children. Elder relatives are generally revered and may live by themselves or with younger member of the family, never in nursing homes. Strong kinship ties may extend as far as fifth and sixth cousins. In any domestic dispute, it is wise for officers to show proper respect for an elder present and to seek their view of the situation. And of course, it is extremely important not to ignore the husband in a family situation. To do so would cause him to lose face before his people. The matter of saving face is something which needs further discussion. It is a subject which affects everyone to one extent or another, but it is especially sensitive for Indians. Trials and errors is not a public part of the Indian way. The Indian way is to remain still, to observe, to assess a situation, to study it, and then to participate only when one has properly prepared oneself. To humiliate an Indian by causing him to appear foolish before others should be avoided whenever possible. Indians tend to speak quietly, and a non-Indian may need to be even more attentive and alert if he hopes to hear all of a conversation. Many Indian culture practices and customs are retained by Indian in the city. Indian food, such as fry bread and corn stew, may be served in a home. Many families speak one or more Indian language in addition to English and may give their children Indian names. Indian clothing and jewelry are often worn as reminders of ties with tribal traditions. Recreation favored by Indians tend to be outdoors and is often related to back home. It is something to be shared with other Indians. This accounts for the many Indian athletic leagues supported by men and women. Leisure reading leans towards home newspapers and publications. Supplement an active Indian grapevine. In Los Angeles, a newspaper called Talking Leaf is one of the most widely read. I write a column in it, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the most uniquely Indian activities you should know about is the powwow. The word comes from an Algonquin term meaning conjure and has come to refer to as coming together. Dancing and traditional games are a typical part of most powwows, for dancing with drums and songs is a common denominator linking all Indians. Native American religious ceremonies are often held in conjunction with powwows. All of these activities and the larger rodeos and all Indian gatherings attract Indians of all ages. It is not uncommon for Indians to travel great distances for these events, for they fulfill a deep need for the rejuvenation and restoration of the spirit. The urban Indian especially can feel very estranged from nature, isolated as he is within the confines of concrete and freeways and the frustration of different way of life. The ties with the Earth Mother must be renewed periodically. You see, I'm alive, a Kiowa chant affirms. You see, I stand in good relation to the earth. You see, I stand in good relation to the God. You see, I stand in good relation to all that is beautiful. You see, I stand in good relation to you. I'm alive. I am alive. Harmony with nature and the universe are at the heart of the Indian way. The invocation of the Great Spirit is an old prayer done of our Indians for many years. We do it in many languages and also Indian Sign Language. And when we have our powwow, like we have the Little Bighorn Indian Association powwow, first Saturday every month, someone has to get up there and do the prayer. The invocation of the Great Spirit. Great Spirit, whose voice in the winds I hear, and whose breath give life to all the world. Hear me. Before you I come, one of your many children, small and weak am I. Your strength and wisdom I need. Make me walk in beauty. Make my heart respect all you have made. My ears to hear your voice. Make me wise that I may know all you have taught my people. The lesson you have hidden in every rock. I seek strength, not to be superior to my brother. Make me able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ready to stand before you with clean hands and straight eyes. When life fades as a fading sunset, may our spirit stand before you without shame. This is the essence of the Indian way. It is this which the Indian is determined not to lose as he learns to make his way more and more within the white man's world. Self-reliance instilled by harmony with the land make the Indian an individualist within the framework of a tribal group. Physical types and cultures may vary from region to region, from tribe to tribe, but today's Indian is the product of many heritages, a new man with the old ways still in him. We have wept the blood of countless ages as each of us raised high the lance of hate. Now let us dry our tears and learn to dance and chant of the life cycle. Tomorrow dances behind the sun in sacred promise of things to come. For children not yet born, for ours is the potential of truly lasting beauty. Born of hope and shaped by deed. Now, let us lay the lance of hate upon this soil.